So the ends of marriage, therefore, have been traditionally expressed in the church as the so-called tria bona matrimoni, the three goods of marriage. Good defined as the finality, what perfects a thing. In juridic parlance, we can speak of the pretension, that which is primarily sought by the juridic act of marriage or of getting married. And these are the good of fidelity, the bonum fide, reducible to the good of the spouses or the bonum conjugi. And then you have the good of offspring, the bonum prole, which is the sanctity of human life, the possibility of reproduction or procreation. And then you have the good of the family, the bonum familia, which is the cradle of humanity. All of those are the natural ends of marriage. But there's a fourth one for those who are baptized. Of course, this doesn't belong anymore to the natural institution of marriage. That won't find any reflection in civil law, because civil law is not that. But in canon law, yes, there's a fourth, which is the good of the sacrament, the bonum sacramenti. Because for the baptized, that natural institution of marriage with the finality that we have studied or seen so far, with the essential qualities that we have seen so far, has been raised by Jesus Christ to become a sacrament. And remember, the definition of a sacrament is the visible sign instituted by Christ to give grace. So in other words, that natural reality of a man and a woman falling in love and setting up a life, a consortium of love and life for the finality of mutual perfection, mutual help, mutual companionship, and for the possible procreation and upbringing of children. Now that was raised by Christ so that it becomes now a sacrament, an avenue for God to give His grace. Pardon me, but when I said the essential qualities, I took it for granted we took it, but I just now, in hindsight, realized that we didn't take it. What are the essential qualities of conjugal love? The essential qualities are those qualities which are inseparable from the consecution of the natural ends that define that union. What are the natural ends again? Mutual help, procreation and upbringing of children, and the good of the family. Now, what are the qualities essential for the attainment of those ends? And you have two. Number one, monogamy. And number two, indissolubility. And let's very briefly tackle that, because that has to be laid to rest as an institution, as a immovable consideration. Love, which is total, which is what conjugal love is the total self-giving of a man in the totality of his personhood as man to a woman in the totality of her femininity as woman, and accepted. Make that mutual, that's what we call conjugal love. Now, if it's like that, look at this. One cannot give himself and then take it back. Whatever is given is not yours anymore. That's what differentiates giving, donation, from lending. Conjugal love is not conjugal lending. Against conjugal lending, you know? Orasan. Just for a while. You know, in 2 Congresses ago, somebody was crazy enough to file a bill which precisely would make marriage, what do you call that? Time dependent. So there's putting an expiry date to the marriage contract, no? A 15-year marriage, a 20-year marriage, a 10-year marriage, like getting a license or a visa. That's crazy. Nat King Cole was right. Yeah, remember what Nat King Cole said? If I give my heart, it will be completely. If I fall in love, it will be forever. Those are the two things. To give oneself completely means that there's nothing left over to give to somebody else. That's why it's monogamous. To fall in love forever, I mean, totally means also that it has no end. It will be forever. Otherwise, it's not love. Now, here I put a little bit of an aside so that you can breathe and relax a bit intellectually. Look at this. We're living in a world where people are naturally trained for what I call serial monogamy. That many times young people or people in general confuse love with being monogamous. As long as one is monogamous, that's love. You really frown at somebody who's too timing. Even boyfriend, girlfriends, or people with an MU relationship, they know that where they're in an MU or they're going steady, they're not supposed to be dating somebody else. Otherwise, they're too timing. That's monogamy. But it's not forever. That's why, you go through college. How many girlfriends do you go through college or from high school? I know about you, but I went to several girlfriends in college before I finally got into the priesthood. Because it's like that. Because that kind of a relationship is not for keeps. That's not love. That's a special kind of friendship. That's even not love in the sense that many times it's self-serving. Why do I want a girlfriend? Because I don't want to face the hassle of having to find a date every weekend. At least a girlfriend is always available for the weekend date or something like that. That's what happens in college. That's what happens with yuppies. It's not forever. For as long as it's not for keeps, it's not love yet. Can be a very strong attachment, could be a very, shall we say, a good arrangement, but it's not love. It's not conjugal love. Now, that practice of falling in love, quote unquote, one after another, is what I call serial monogamy. And it's really a wind up to the divorces mentality. Because a person who's used, who was brought up in an environment like that, where he or she said, I love you, but then broke up afterwards, gets used to the idea that you can stop loving. No, you can't stop loving. Love is unconditional. Every parent knows this. You love your children regardless of what happens to them. That's the success of the song of Freddie Aguilar, Anak, bakit ka nagkaganyan? But the pathos, why was that song so famous in Japan? Because really it was a big hit in Japan during that time. And looking at you, most of you will be aware of what I'm talking about. I'm 71 years old. So during that time, I was very conscious already of what was happening. It was a big hit in Japan because it hit at the very core of the Japanese value of filiation, of paternity, the relationship between father and son, and how painful it is for a father if a son misbehaved. Well, love is like that. Love is unconditional. Okay. It's not an annulment, much less is it a divorce. It's a declaration of nullity. Now, after seeing all of this, what are the things that come to mind? And what comes to mind are the following. That what is needed more than, and here I'm going to share with you another stop share. You are in sharing mode. Share. I will share this instead. I'm sorry. Do you see my slide, my new slide? You see it, right?
Not yet, Father.
No, not yet.
There are three things that need to be introduced to the family code to make it more, shall we say, agile in declarations of nullity. Because as I said, what is needed is not a divorce bill that will affect all marriages, but rather measures to make declaration of nullity more agile and more accessible to everyone faster, so that troublesome marriages can be declared null. And the only things that will fall out of this, they cannot be declared null because they were really valid, will therefore be cases of what? Somebody reneging on his commitments. And no law should be passed to let him get away with that. No, it's just like the legalization of abortion or the legalization of marijuana or drugs or the legalization of prostitution. I mean, those are very bad measures. You shouldn't legalize something which is wrong. At least we can regulate it. Yeah, the way to regulate it is not to let it happen. That's the way to regulate it, not to let it happen in a more, shall we say, reasonable way. Like what happened with abortion in England. There was a time in the 1990s, early 90s, when there was a lot of discussion regarding abortion in England, because it was already, because they had abortion. And the gist of the argument was how to make abortion more painless for the fetus. what what absurdity, no? I mean, you're going to end his life, but at least don't make it painful for him. So that was the thing. That's crazy, no? So that's exactly what happens with the legalization of abortion, the legalization of divorce, the legalization of homosexual unions or marriage. All of these are wrong behaviors, wrong acts, and you're trying to legalize it. Well, you should not legalize anything that's wrong. Rather, offer an alternative solution, and this is the alternative. No? So the lack of due discretion of judgment is one of the most common grounds for the declaration of marriage nullity in church tribunals. It's based on the invalidity of a marriage consent that stemmed from a defective judgment at the moment of giving consent due to the incidence of immaturity, error, deceit, fear, and even psychological factors in the decision-making process. It's quite obvious why such a defective decision to marry could later on lead to an irreparably broken marriage. That is, such a marriage had no leg to stand on in the first place. So again, don't legalize divorce, which will affect all marriages. Make it possible to detect this defect and to declare that such a marriage is invalid from the start. Then the other thing is
Father?
simile.
Excuse me, Father. You have not changed to your slide.
I haven't changed my slide.
Yeah, that
I
was
thought-
still on the consent.
Okay, because I changed the screen that I'm sharing. It seems like that didn't happen. Let me
Stop
see.
share, Father, and then
I have to
reshare.
stop share first.
Yes, po.
And it just
Okay.
change just like that, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
opo.
I was trying to do a shortcut and that didn't work, obviously. So let's change that. So there. Share. And then share. Get it? Do you have it now?
Yes, Father. Yes, po.
Okay.
It's highlighted in green.
Yes, I'll just increase your size so I can see you. There you are. Yes, I have 3 screens in front of me, you know. So the lack of due discretion, we saw that. And now let's even have a touch screen here. So simulation. Now, what is simulation? Another very common thing. Simulation occurs. Let me just increase the size of this so that you can read it easier. Yeah. Simulation occurs when a couple goes through the external motions of a wedding ceremony, but without the intention of entering into the institution of marriage. Kung wari nagpapakasal, but in their mind, hindi naman sila nagpapakasal. Now, that can be done two ways. Either ayaw nila talaga magpakasal, or ayaw nila ng isang essential quality of marriage. So the exclusion of one of the essential qualities of marriage, and what are the essential qualities of marriage again? There are three, remember? Number one, indissolubility. Number two, monogamy. And three, openness to life. So if any of those three is excluded internally, then that marriage is what you call simulated. An example is a marriage of convenience for the purpose of facilitating immigration, but without the intention of living together as husband and wife. Less extreme cases are those of a couple who, at the time of the wedding, had the intentions of excluding an essential property of marriage, such as procreation. The couple does not want to have children at all, or unity, cases of open relationship, and indissolubility. The couple is open to the possibility of divorce. Marriages tainted by simulation are void for the same reason that absolutely simulated contracts are void under Article 1409 of the Civil Code of the Philippines, because the couple did not enter into the marriage contract in the first place. Now, this is not in the civil legislation, but it can very well be included for this reason. If marriage is a contract, then it should follow the requirements for a valid contract. And one of the invalidating factors for a contract is this, Article 1409 of the Civil Code of the Philippines, the Philippine Civil Code. On the other hand, here's a third one. A person who contracts marriage inveigled by deceit, perpetrated in order to secure consent concerning some quality of the other party, which of its very nature can seriously disrupt conjugal life, does so invalidly, means the marriage or consents invalidly. Such is the case, for example, of a person who marries a person who has hidden the fact of his or her homosexuality or criminal status, or having dependent children out of wedlock, or drug addiction, or other such characteristics. There are other incidences of defective consent, which the Code of Canon Law recognizes as grounds for nullity of marriage, and which could similarly be imported into Philippine law. This could cover all the truly meritorious cases of irreparably broken marriages with irreconcilable difference. That is to say, all cases of marriages which were really void ab initio. I say almost, because the only exceptions would be those which are valid, and as I said, for the nth time now, therefore, people who want a divorce for that really just want to renege on their commitments, and no law should justify such a heinous act of reneging on your commitments. Finally, a change of terminology would really help clarify the issues. A glaring point is to do away with the difference in the family code between void and voidable marriages, such that marriages tainted by fraud, violence, undue intimidation, etc., would not be merely voidable, as they're called now in the family code, but rather void ab initio. Because if you think about it, what's the difference between void and voidable? For those of you who are lawyers there, is one of the discussions that I hope you got into. And if not, well, I just wish you were in my class instead in matrimonial law, because I really believe at this point that the difference between void and voidable is absolutely, pardon me again, because I don't mince words with these things, stupid. You know? One consequence of this is that under Article 39 of the same code, the parties to such marriages will still have a remedy available even beyond the 5-year limit currently imposed under Article 47 of that code, and would not be limited to psychological incapacity under Article 36 of that code to have their marriages declared null and void from the start. And here's a little aside. unfortunately, as I said, when the family code was crafted as a concession, because they really, some people wanted divorce, but okay, that's divisive and it's against the values. And besides, we were under Cory Aquino at that time, so they instead imported something from the Code of Canon Law. And I have it in my conscience that at that time, when I was consulted by the nunciature, no less, how that family code was, I said, no, it's okay. It's taken from the Code of Canon Law. At that time, I was very young. I was a very young priest. I didn't have enough experience. That little did I realize that, yeah, it was taken, but taken very defectively. No? They just got Article 3, Canon 1095, paragraph 3, precisely the so-called psychological incapacity. And it just so happens that that particular ground is one of the least used grounds in nullity cases. Because I always say this, no, that normally, for the greater part, people are psychologically normal. Because it's a curve, di ba? The so-called normal curve, the bell, it's also called the bell curve. For those of you who have taken statistics in college or in high school, it's called a bell curve, or it's called the Gaussian curve, no? The Gauss curve. It's like that. That the great part of the population is there in the normal, and then there are very few incidences in one side or the other of normalcy. It is normalcy. No, so the great there are there, either under normal or sobra normal. No, but then the little symptotic curve there at the ends. Very few people are abnormal psychologically. That the preponderant majority are normal. So therefore, psychological abnormalcy as a ground for a dysfunctional marriage will seldom happen. Now, unfortunately, precisely that's the only thing that was imported by the family code. Ano nga mangyayari? So they have to massage everything to that thing, which is not real, by the way. So many of the declarations of nullity in civil courts is moral, psychological incapacity. I once adjudged a case in the ecclesiastical tribunal that had been adjudged in civil court already, and on the ground of psychological incapacity because the husband was homosexual. I remember interviewing the driver, no? May napansin ka bang, kabadingan dun sa boss mo? The guy told me, Father, wala. Actually, ang problema talaga niya kung saan beer house ko nga siya hinahatid. Dahil babaero talaga yung boss ko, no? So, the problem was the opposite, no? Then when I interviewed the guy, I asked him, ba't ganon? And then you know what he told me? Well, I wanted out. I got a lawyer, and that's what they said. And he made the case based on that. Ewan ko, paano yung ginawa yun? Very easy. You get a psychological evaluation, you pay the person, and you get it. That's the reason why civil nullity or annulment cases are so expensive. The typical package for annulment in civil court is 300,000 pesos. Papataas. I have a client who has already spent 600,000 pesos, hindi pa rin niya makuha-kuha because he happened to be raffled off to a judge who considered herself a very good Catholic, daily mass goer, and she systematically was making all kinds of problems because she didn't want to grant an annulment in court. So delay. Actually, it was already the lawyer na awa na sa kanya and say, Sir, awa na ako sa'yo, 600,000 na, wala pa rin nangyayari. Let's just drop this case. Let some time pass and refile it in another tribunal. And that's what exactly happened. No? So that's the problem. And that's what's in the mind of the pro-divorce camp. They see that reality, ang hirap-hirap kumuha ng declaration of nullity or annulment, mas madali itong divorce. So what we need to do is to offer a solution, not to go into the immorality of abortion, or rather of divorce, or the church position. That's old. That's old argument. No, you can argue that until you're blue. Hindi tatalab yun because there's a problem. So you have to address that problem, no, and not argue in a different reason, no. Separation of church and state nga.